Good morning and welcome to Construction World webinar series. The topic for today is building safety and efficiency. I am Pratap Padode, Editor-in-Chief, Construction World magazine and founder, First Construction Council, Smart Cities Council India and ASAP Info Global Group. Did you know that we lose 35 lives a day to fires? That over the last 4 years, we have lost 60,500 lives due to fire between 2015 and 2018. The National Building Code 2016, which regulates construction activity, has guidelines issued to all state governments to incorporate the recommendations of the latest NBC 2016 Part 4 Fire and Life Safety into their local building bylaws. The code also now incorporates Energy Conservation Building Code developed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. The World Green Building Council estimates that green buildings could generate higher returns. We all know that additional costs could be lower by 0.5% to 12%. Operational costs can go up to 37%. Green buildings could achieve sales premium of up to 31% and faster sales times. Occupancy rates could be higher by 23% and rental income by up to 8%. So these are the issues which all come around building safety and efficiency. And let me present to you our esteemed expert panel. Here we go. We have with us Mr. Ashish Rakheja, International President, Fire and Safety Association of India. We have Mr. Sanjay Seth, CEO of Griha Council. Mr. Rishi Mittal, National President, ISHRE. And Mr. Vishal Kapoor, Chair, Technical Committee, ISHRE. Welcome all panelists. Thank you for joining us here. All of them experts in this field that we are talking about, safety and efficiency. So good to have all of you here.
Thank you.
The National Building Code lays down several provisions that help protect buildings from fires and enable easy evacuation. Yet fires have been taking place regularly. COVID-19 has brought in another set of SOPs for safety in buildings. Recently itself, there have been 3 fires in and around Mumbai. During these COVID times, building projects have changed over the last decade or two, becoming more complex. And the importance of the performance and functionality of the building has only increased over the years. For example, at one stage, civil or structures contributed to 70 to 90% of the project. But now, MEP, finishes, and facade contribute nearly 60 to 70% of the project. Evidently, opportunities for support industry is now popularly referred to as specialized contracting services such as MEP, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, paints, facade work, insulation, lighting and waterproofing, among others, have expanded over time. These have to collectively use technologies which can save energy, wastage, resources of time and money, and thereby prove effective return on investment over time. Let me now direct my questions to our panel here. But before I do that, let me introduce Construction World, the magazine that has been running for last 23 years and is the leader in this segment with its distribution across 800 cities in India. Some of the issues that we have covered, it covers the entire infrastructure construction. It covers build and design, building, various story snapshots here on your screen now. Our company also offers digital services, very, very pertinent during this current time where online access is the only means of go-to for marketing promotion. Our other publications include Indian Cement Review, Infrastructure Today, Equipment India, Project Reporter, which constantly keeps you updated on projects at conceptual and planning stage, with contacts details, very useful. Indian Textile Journal, Industrial Products Finder. Here is some statistics which should, make you really wake up to the reality of what fire safety is all about. Imagine 12,478 Indians died in fire, 748 died in 56% of fires were all in homes. Most died from short circuits, Indians. There were, I think, mostly males there. 1967, women died of cocaine gas bursts. And 55% of fire deaths are from just 5 states: Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Odisha, Chhattisgarh. More women die of fire accidents than men. Obviously, cooking gas bursts may be one of the prime reasons. And home fires are a prime concern. And of course, electrical short circuits. So I think very pertinent reasons are given what caused these accidents. Buildings, on the other hand, have become, they nearly use 40% of your electric power of the city, and they have begun to offer so many services, as is evident from the slide out here. You can see, I think indoor air quality will become one of the major performing metric in times to come. But otherwise, HVAC maintenance services, fire detection, security, digital video, now of course security is another major concern, environment control, and others. I'd like to, before we just go over to our panel, I'd like to conduct an audience poll, which is on your screen now. Okay, I think we will go to the poll a little later. Let's start off with the discussion first. So I'd like to address the first question to Mr. Sanjay Seth. Mr. Seth, would you come in now and tell us that how would real estate, so like I would like you to address that in building codes, what kind of changes do you foresee coming in the light of this COVID crisis? I mean, we have seen that, fires are a concern. We have seen that, so still I think the economy is going to get cost conscious. People don't want to spend too much on technology, yet want to retain safety, and yet you have to make buildings efficient. So in that sense, what do you anticipate, any changes in building codes, or do you think the current building code is good enough?
Thank you very much, Pratapji. You see, the codes and all of those things are very much in place, and they cover a whole lot of range of issues around safety and comforts and the resource efficiency bits and all of that. They are very well specified and defined in these codes. It's where the problem is, that where we lack is, of course, the implementation frameworks, that we are not very serious on how we kind of approach it and how do we go about implementing it. So that's the key. The pandemic, the current pandemic that we are in, really highlights, and it shows us the state of play of how vulnerable we are and what we really need to do, so that we are able to kind of make sure that our future, the planning and the design, we adhere to, we don't kind of obviate any of these, and we try and follow them as close as possible. You see, one of the biggest, if you look at the challenge that the current building industry is facing currently, as per a study of KPMG in 2020, this COVID-19 has kind of suffered a loss. Because of this, there is a loss about 76 lakh crores by the end of the current financial year, that is 2021. That is the extent of losses that are going to be incurred by the industry because of the closing down and because of the issues of, and now once they open up also, I think they're going to have huge amount of challenges in terms of migrant labors labor force not being there. So all of this is really going to dampen the spirit of the real estate sector. It will take, to my mind, I think it will take about 6 to 12 months for it to really revive, and it could even probably that's the earliest. I mean, I'm being very, very ambitious by saying that 6 to 12 months. It could be as way of as maybe even 24 months for it really to be picking up the same kind of speed at which we were growing earlier. And then obviously all of this would require a relook, and we need to really start looking at transformational changes in the kind of buildings that we were designing. We saw that when the lockdowns were announced, there were some people even have the basic home themselves going into. So all of these really show that we were not ahead, and we really kind of make sure that infrastructure that we put in place in the future is going to address some of these in a much more comprehensive way. So I think and then there would be new shifts in the way we design the segments, the real estate segments. There will be a paradigm shift in what kinds of segments would now be thrown open. So these are some of the, I think, ways we're going to be seeing in the future.
Right. I think, yeah, the times are such that, so you say that actually the National Building Code actually encompasses a lot of the elements of, what we need to look after. I think basically they have not been enforced thoroughly and not been adopted fully. And that would have actually provided for all these kind of measures that we might need to introduce even now. And there may not be a real need to actually introduce anything if we follow the codes correctly. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I would like to go over to Mr. Mittal now. And Mr. Mittal, air quality has become a major concern now. Obviously, yeah, I'm going to get into a office or anybody is going to be in a factory. You want to know the air quality and whether that is going to be a medium of transmission. So I think what do you see the change in this whole sector, HVAC sector, that due to this current crisis, what new developments would come about?
Thanks, Pratapji. I think air quality will be talked very, very, very much. We have been talking about air quality from very beginning, but air quality was pertaining to comfort. We were talking of inducting fresh air for CO2 levels. We are trying to filter the air quality for PM 2.5 and other parameters. Now that this pandemic has come in and COVID has become a serious concern, people will seriously think about air quality. And as there are a lot of technologies available, there are passive and active. So various technologies are in force, and it will be really looked in a very serious manner. And as we say that dilution of the air is the solution to the problem. So that I think is going to take it up. And potentially, I would say that air quality is going to be the highest priority of every building. It was there earlier also, but now people will be very serious because they are looking at COVID nowadays. Thank you, Pratapji. Was I audible, everyone?
Yeah, you are. I think Mr. Pratap has got frozen over.
Correct. You are audible. I think he's having problem with the connection now, just like me earlier.
So I think Vishal or Ashish, if you could take it up on air quality a little bit till Pratapji joins in on the question that he has.
Vishal is the chief on this. So yeah.
No, it's as rightly said by Richie. Yes, air quality is going to be a big issue, but I'm a little pessimistic in some cases. I find Indians have a very short memory, and we worry about air quality right now because of COVID, and 6 months, 10 months, 12 months down, when it's all over, we're back to normal, we would have again forgotten about it. Unfortunately, a lot of us in India are using air quality protocols, norms, or the suggestions only to get in some points possibly and for ratings, but the real requirement of that from a long-term perspective is not there in our mind. There are buildings in the construction sector, in the commercial sector, who are very concerned, and they will put, as an example, I'll tell you, they'll put in the right filter in an air handling unit, which is the requirement. So the consultant, the designer would recommend them the right filter as per the air quality, and they would install it in the first case. Go to the building after a year, go to the building after a couple of years, and you will realize that filter has just disappeared. I have walked into hospitals during COVID times in this last couple of months, and they have air handling units running, throwing in air converted to 100% treated fresh air unit. That means 100% outdoor air supply, and the filter is just not there. So the unfortunate thing for us in India is going to be, are we going to be forgetting this after 6 months or 1 year? Or are we now going to be taking this seriously for the rest of our life? Nothing that we're facing today is anything greatly new. It's just the kind of pollutant inside, the kind of microbe, the kind of pathogen is changing, and is a little bit more dangerous than others. But yes, air pollution kills. Mr. Pratap was talking about the number of deaths due to fire. If he talks about the number of deaths due to air pollution, I think fire will not even be talked about. On the number of deaths due to air pollution in India or the world over, we're talking about like 1.2 million deaths because of air pollution. And yet, how many of us really talk about air? How many across board are really concerned about air, including the person who breathes? I'm not even talking about the people who construct, including the person who breathes. Is he really conscious? He's very conscious about the water he's going to drink. He's very conscious about the building looks, the building feel, even the temperature. It's not cold, it's hot, it's warm. But is he really bothered about the air he's breathing? No. Most people in the world are not bothered about the air they're breathing. And that needs to change going ahead permanently, not just for COVID, but permanently going ahead, whether it comes in as regulations, whether it comes in as a combination of self-consciousness, but it needs to change and to tell people, listen, what you breathe today is far, far, far more important than anything else in your life.
Absolutely.
And we need to work on that. And that's a message that needs to go loud and clear.
Pratap, I just want to add to what Vishal said.
Yeah.
So just want to add there. I think I do look a positive, Vishal and Richie, in that because if you look at it, what we are doing or what we are recommending as guidelines coming out of the ISHRAE and other places that I'm reading is basically reinforcing the basics that were always part of the design. It's just that we have forgotten that. So I think that gets reinforced, number one. If you look at the green building norms, they also talk about the same thing. They go a step further on that. And number three, whereas the larger buildings were still following it to some extent or more positive, but the problem was in the small shops, the window ACs, the split ACs, VRS. I think that's where the real understanding of the subject would start coming in. I see a positive in that. I think that shift in the market is now going to happen. So Pratap, over to you. Since you got disconnected, we carried the discussion ourselves then.
Right. So Ashish, I want to come back to you, and I must agree with Mr. Kapoor and Mr. Mittal on this air quality thing, because even when COVID started, people were slightly shy of wearing masks right in the beginning, until the Prime Minister actually enforced everybody to read it, to use them. And I think it's going to be part of our daily lives in time to come. I want to go to Ashish, your particular subject on fire, because you represent Fire Security Association. And we read the report that actually there is a gross deficit in manpower strength and firefighting equipment. And given the fact that these kind of buildings have become more complex, they got far more gadgets, electrical usage has just gone up. I mean, how do you see this big infrastructure deficit being addressed?
So Pratap, I think it's a very valid question what you're picked up now. As Fire and Security Association, when we started, we did look at this was one of our major concerns. There was so much happening on the equipment availability front in India as such in a private industry, but when you go to the infrastructure side, we found that there was still a lot lacking. When we interacted with our fire officers, you'd be surprised, and this is something which they themselves were very knowledgeable on the subject. A lot of them were knowledgeable on the subject, and they were in their own private way insisting on the projects to implement things. But the challenge, of course, it comes down to general awareness, because it should not start, the fire safety should not start from the regulatory bodies. It should start from us, because who are we trying to make the building safe for? It's us, our own building, my house, my office, my place that I go to for entertainment. All of that need to fire safe for my own safety, because fire is not going to ask, oh, you are there, so I'll not be igniting here. So that's not the case. So the challenge is not, I would say, on the regulatory side alone. I would put it more on self also. There's very little instances that we come across that you have a good firefighting equipment in your own building, the chances of their chances of building going up in fire at that point of time are little, because you have a good infrastructure to fight the fire. So I would not look at just say that why are the authorities, what kind of infrastructure they have, but I would rather go back and say what kind of awareness do we as an engineer, as a building owner, as operators we carry there. So responsibility lies first on us and then on the authorities. Coming on the authority side, I know Pratap has got disconnected, so I can continue now as long as I want. But I think let's carry this webinar through. So as Fire and Security Association, what we have been doing, we've been engaging with the chief fire officers across India. Some of the CFOs have been very active, like the CFO from Goa, CFO from Maharashtra, CFO from Gujarat. They've been very, very active on our platform. They've been coming there regularly, doing that. We've also been doing as a society demonstrative exercises of fire safety equipment at various buildings. We have done that too. So from our side, we are doing it. If I look at it, what was the situation about few years back before FSI took this active role to what it is now, I think there's a sea change. But since Pratap, you were gone, the bottom line is let's start from us, not from the authorities.
So I'd like to, I think during these times, ISHRAE has come out with guidelines and which are all acknowledged. And I think even Mr. Sanjay Seth was mentioning earlier that even Griha has come with building fitness guidelines. But I'd like Mr. Vishal Kapoor to inform us about the guidelines that have been introduced by ISHRAE as far as this particular crisis is concerned.
Thanks, Pratap. I guess over the last few weeks, one of the, if you look and make a list of the commonly spoken words or the terms, air conditioning would be featuring right in the top 5 or top 10, apart from COVID and lockdown and etc., social distancing, etc. Air conditioning for the mostly the wrong reasons has been in media, digital media, print media, everywhere. People talking about all kinds, whether it's a malls opening or hospitals or homes or offices, central plants, all kinds. And there have been concerns raised about the likelihood of the spread of this disease through operation of the air conditioning systems. Now we know that infectious disease can spread by several different routes, but I think we all know that short distance transmission is finally the most common method. That is how this virus is actually transmitting the most. But even then, the questions being asked are whether this spread can be accelerated or controlled by heating, ventilating, or air conditioning systems, the HVAC systems, depending on how the system is designed, how is it operated. Especially now with relaxations coming in, lockdowns, and more offices, factories, shops opening. Now there's a lot of debate around air conditioning, whether to use or not, how to operate, do we need to modify the system, how to restart a facility, what guidelines to follow, etc., etc. What's the future like? In fact, friends of mine who would never ever talk to me about profession, about business, about work, reach out to me and saying, "Boss, AC ka kya hai? What do we do about this AC?" And that just tells you how much people are aware, rightly or wrongly, about this whole subject. So because of that, ISHRAE, the Indian Society of Heating, Refrigerating, Air Conditioning Engineers, ISHRAE, we put together a COVID task force combined with some big brains and covering academia to designers to manufacturers across the whole country. And we brought out this guidance documents for air conditioning operations. And we basically covered and we talked about indoor environment conditions. We covered applications like residential, commercial, industrial, healthcare. We talked about operation and maintenance, including startup and restartup of facilities. And we had safety do's and don'ts for technicians. Fortunately, without us really pushing it hard, we've got this document, major acceptance the document has got from across the country. For example, the CPWD, MES, the state governments, facility management organizations, green rating agencies, healthcare organizations, private companies, individuals, more and more people I talk to. There are people I've gone for meetings and they've told me, sir, we are following this guideline of something called ISHRAE, not knowing that I'm part of the whole task force. So it's good to know that people have actually taken a technical document this seriously. And broadly in this document, we've given our recommendations for temperature, we've given our recommendation for humidity. And finally, as what Ashish at one point was saying, it's actually going back to what always was supposed to be there. And we discovered the 3 key aspects of a system, especially during these days and forever, is going to be ventilation, filtration, and pressurization. If we take care of these 3, whether it's a hospital or an office or a residence or any kind of an application, we are more or less safe. especially for commercial establishments and industry facilities, because they have multiple occupants. People keep on coming in and out, visitors, etc. They do not have a control on who is coming in from where. It becomes even more important to understand how to operate an air conditioning system, how to ensure a safe and a comfortable environment for your occupants. Now, what's very important is that mechanical ventilation and a filtration, which can be provided by a central air conditioning system or any air conditioning system, can actually perform this function far more effectively compared to what simply opening the windows, because a mechanical system will actually properly ventilate the space. It will improve the indoor air quality with the outdoor air filtration. And finally, it's very clear that we can say it openly that during this time, the pandemic, lockdown lifted, not lifted, air conditioning and ventilation systems can be safely operated, residential, commercial, healthcare, with specific controls for temperature, for humidity, and the right amount of outdoor air coming in, maintaining the hygiene levels, improving your filtration points, and taking care of all aspects over there. Obviously, the far more important things finally are going to be the personal protocol, the PPE, the social distancing, to ensure the short transmission virus does not happen. So broadly, this is what the ISHRAE guidelines covered, and it's there as a free download for anyone in the whole world from ishrae.in. And it's really good document, even for a not a hardcore technical person, to go through and understand what and how air conditioning can reduce or help prevent the spread of this virus. Thanks.
A quick follow-up, Mr. Kapoor. Most of the systems installed in buildings across the country are dated, and legacy systems, past old air conditioning systems, etc. How well can they be tuned up in order to meet this kind of a new reality? I mean, when you need a certain defined kind of air quality that you require, you want to prevent transmission. What is there a way to sort of retrofit the existing systems, or will people have to go in for new systems altogether? Or what is your advice? What is ISHRAE's advice?
Listen, finally, ISHRAE says very clearly, formally and informally both, that for any application, specific application, you will finally have to go to a specialized person, a designer or a contractor for your specific building, because no two buildings are alike. They'll always be different. So you should reach out to a qualified professional designer or contractor to help you remodify your system. But at the same point, most systems around us can be retrofitted, can be modified without changing the entire system altogether. You would need change in some components, some parts of an air conditioning system. For example, if you want to improve the filtration level of your air handling unit, you might have to look at changing your motor, or might have to even look at changing your blower possibly to get in that extra drop across the filter. If you want to bring in more outdoor air than what you're supposed to be bringing in, or what you're bringing in today, there are ways of doing that without changing the entire system. Maybe add one more small, like our document says, add in a smaller treated fresh air unit to bring in the fresh air, or find some other ways without changing the entire system. But I come back to the first point. These are required anyways. These are not only for COVID. So if you can't do it today, please do it tomorrow. It might take you a month, it might take you 2 months to be able to implement some of these protocols, but they are all possible. It's not that you have to go ahead and spend the entire air conditioning cost all over again. No, it's going to be a part of that cost, but it is necessary to do it, and it is possible to do it.
Right. Okay. Ashish, would you be able to tell us also some guidelines on the fire safety elements, which particularly have probably already been there, but now more emphasized in current times?
Sure. So I think we start with of course, because first of all, the buildings are going to restart now. So that's one important aspect of when we restart. We need to be careful about the systems, how they're operating. Are they operating well, or they're not operating well? Because that becomes a prime concern. But these are the fire and life safety systems. Now, there is a guideline, there is a task force which was also set up by FSAI, Fire and Security Association. Our past president was the chair of that task force. There are guidelines which have been issued by FSAI, which are available on the FSAI website. They are free download. Talk about the do's and don'ts of how the fire system should be restarted. Once you've done that, then it comes down to operations. How should the protection of the people who are involved in the operations of the building, plus the maintenance of it, how should they be protected also from there? So there are guidelines which are there. They're freely downloadable. One can look at this. So FSA has been quite active in being part of it. So just at the time when ISHRE released their guidelines, the FSI also came out with their own guidelines.
Mr. Seth, would you also, you want to tell us about your building fitness guidelines that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, okay. So we kind of created this tool that is called the Building Fitness Indicator. It is, you see, when post the lockdown, once people start going back to their workplaces, there is a certain amount of apprehension in the minds of the people as to how safe their work places are, and whether they would be, prone to these infections or not during these times. And what is it that the workplaces, how have they been secured in terms of sanitization and hygiene and social distancing, which is very, very important. So around that, and the various guidelines that have been issued by the World Health Organization or the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, guidelines such as ISHRE that we are talking about, the Central Pollution Control Board, all of these guidelines, they have issued various kinds of checklists. So what we've done is that using these guidelines, we've created a tool which helps you to assess how safe and secure your places, how so that there is some amount of confidence that is built into the people who are going back to work. I mean, I'll just tell you a story today. I am flooded with the requests from various colleagues that can they still continue to work from home, because although offices have been declared open and they are expected to work out of their offices, they are not very, they are not very confident about the public transport systems. They don't feel secure traveling by autos or by Ubers. So, and people, I mean, who don't have their own transport. So they are saying that we would like to continue. So I do not know how long will this continue, because you see, and they are saying that, I said, okay, when do you think you would be able to resume work? They are saying when the numbers start falling. I don't think so that's going to happen in the next couple of months. The numbers are going to keep on increasing. As lockdowns are gradually eased out, there would be more and more numbers that will really go up, and that is going to become a big problem. So I think we created this tool. We've been encouraging people to use this tool. It's free of cost. It doesn't cost you a penny. It's more of a social thing that we've done, a social initiative by the Kriya Council. And we are very people that have used the tool. About 200 organizations, as I said, are using this. They are very happy. And in fact, yesterday, one of the best compliments that we got was that during the 2 months of the lockdown, the webinar that we did on the BFI, the Building Fitness Indicator, probably was one of the best webinars that they had attended so far in the 2-month period. So that's I think a big compliment to us. So through your platform, we would also like to tell our viewers and people who are there in the participants to go and log on to this, and use this tool to evaluate safety and hygiene of their workplaces.
Right, Mr. Seth. Now we just want to go back to our audience poll, which I wanted to know, which also highlights the need for green rated buildings. Audience can see the panel in front of them. Yeah, so which is the single most reason to own an apartment or office in a green certified green rated building? And there are 5 options, and you have to choose one of the options. It is on the panel in the screen in front of you. All the attendees can see that. And you either, is it because it saves energy costs? Is it because it will give you higher real estate price appreciation? Is it because it's going to be low maintenance cost? Or because it uses eco-friendly materials? Or because it saves water? Choose one. And in a few seconds, maybe 10 seconds, we will be able to tell you what is the sense of the house on this one. And then we'll have better discussions on why green rated buildings are important. Okay, 5 seconds more, please. All right, so we have the answers now. So saves energy costs is the prime reason. 39% of the audience feels that because it saves energy costs, it's important. The next most is because it uses eco-friendly materials. Yeah. So I think 39% is saves energy costs, and yeah, I think yes, the opinion definitely is clear that saving energy costs and using of eco-friendly materials is uh, the prime reason. Let's go over to Mr. Seth commenting on this particular finding that building efficiencies play a role in monitoring and mitigating costs. Now we know that green buildings are known to save 40% in energy, 30% in water, and GRIA is also undertaking some projects for PWD. So how can buildings efficiency play a role in mitigating costs?
Well, I think you started off by saying it saves 40% energy, savings across energy usage, water, waste, all of that. It kind of throws up less waste and all of that. So uh, it's a no-brainer that green buildings are not only in terms of savings, but it is also in terms of working and living out of them. They are much more healthier facilities to be using. On the long term, if you see, I mean, if you just were to see the energy saving potential from residential sector alone, if they were going to go green, is about to the extent of about 70 terawatt hours, and that's a huge amount of savings. And if you were to kind of look at the commercial sector, it is about 32,042 terawatt hours, and I'm kind of referring to my notes. And there obviously lies in a huge amount of opportunity to reduce our carbon emissions considerably, and also provide for India's energy security, which we have been dealing for, and we've been discussing it in the past. We've also seen that there is a huge amount of water stress. 54% of India is facing very high to extremely high water stress, resulting in detrimental stalling of construction activities. And I think recently we had seen that Bangalore construction activities were stalled because of the water crisis. And this may become a very commonplace event in the future. So such environmental impacts of buildings have also aggravated, they've led on to the discourse on climate change that we all have been, so often hearing. So I think the green buildings, whether it is GRIA or it is IGBC or USGBC, all of them, I think they provide an evidence-based framework to ensure that our future building stock is not only resource efficient, but also low carbon, so that's where they are going. But at the same time, it's very important for people to be understanding that there is this myth around the incremental cost of going green, which is completely wrong. It's a myth, we need to demystify this myth that it costs more to go green. In fact, if you were really to evaluate right from the time when we are planning these buildings to the time they get operated, so of course it's a no-brainer that operations, they are much more efficient in terms of, and they provide you reduced energy bills and reduced water bills and all of that. But even during construction, the costs don't go high, and there are enough case studies which have been in place where if you were to evaluate them and see, the capital cost doesn't go up in going green. So that is one. I think the current pandemic is also a big, it's knocking on our door to tell us that we cannot afford the luxury of kind of not going green any further. It's very important that we adhere to the norms, green norms. The government of India has already issued various guidelines. We all need to follow them. And if we do that, I think we would be kind of obviating such pandemics in the future. It's our responsibility to make sure. Please understand also that the role of government agencies is to issue these guidelines, issue these OMs, issue these directives, but thereafter following them is our own responsibility. And as people, whether we are occupants of such buildings or we are people who are involved in the development of such buildings, largely the responsibility lies on us. So I think, and of course, the current crisis around when we are talking of our economies surviving and reviving, this becomes a huge opportunity. Green buildings become a huge opportunity for the economic revival as well.
So, Mr. Sid, thanks for giving us that input. But, despite
Can I
the
just
benefits
there? Sorry,
of green buildings, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, Ashish, I'll just come back to you. I'm coming to you. Despite the fact that there is so much benefit in building efficiency through green buildings, only 5% of the residential buildings in India are green. So, so Ashish, if you would like to take this, how much of a why is this project cost, affecting the need for taking up green buildings by the users? Even though people know that it saves energy costs, even though you know that you're going to use eco-friendly materials, as our audience poll shows up, what are the obstructions in this use of green buildings and proliferation of this percentage growing from 5% to 10%?
Okay, first I just
Yes,
wanted
Ashish.
to comment on the audience poll that you did just now. It was very interesting. I did see some interesting spikes in that. First, not surprisingly, the energy took the top number because somehow the green buildings have been branded as all people are concerned about the energy. Rest all comes secondary. What came as a pleasant surprise was that the second spot was taken by the materials, which is what I have not seen so far. And this was actually my first instance where somebody in my last 20 years of green has spoken about materials being there which are friendly. So that was an interesting spike. I think you missed one question there. You could have added the sixth one there. The green buildings provide you a healthy environment, because all that we are talking in COVID era, all that we are talking about healthy buildings it's a very integral part of the green building design. If you would have put that, I would have loved to see the response there. Would that have overtaken even energy in this case? So that was the part which was missing. That's one part of it which I wanted to comment on.
I agree with you, Ashish. Yeah.
Right. The second is what you asked about the cost part. What Sanjay ji also brought out is green doesn't cost more. It's a thing that we have been talking about for the last many years. This misinformation was very much around in the early days of the green building movement. Fortunately, it has tapered off to a large extent at this point of time. There are believers. There are the companies who are doing the green buildings again and again and again, not only from a business perspective, but they have also started seeing it makes sense. Like this morning only when I got off a call and I came on this one, there was a client of ours to whom we showed that we have a 25% reduction in the air conditioning loads when you followed the fundamentals of the right design. Whether you call it a green design or right design, it was a right design. And there is a capital cost reduction. So I was fighting with him. I said, you told me on the other day that the green costs more, you don't want to green rating, and here I am giving you a reduction in the cost. Green costs less in my personal perspective. So I think that is going off. And secondly, what government did help, which has been is that linking the FSI to it, linking the benefits to that. Some of them even linking the loans to it, like Pune and all have done that. So that's something which has gone in favor. Today, I would say is a much higher percentage that we go towards green. But I just want to comment one more thing. Sorry about taking too long. Green has still stayed with elite. If Mr. Seth or me have to make our house, will that be green? It remains a question. But if the office where we are in, will that be green? Yes, it'll be green. So green has not filtered down to the bottom level, and that's why your percentage appears low, because you're taking full construction industry, whereas we are only talking about the top end, which is the corporate end and the larger building. So that's where the disconnect is. We are not connected with the common person. My children, my relatives know nothing about green, but my friends, my peers in the industry know everything about green. That's where the challenge is.
Right. Mr. Mittal, I'd like you to comment on what do you think can be measures that ISHRE as an association can propose to the government to make this much more compelling a need, because we know that the logic in favor of it is very, very strong. But what can we do in order to bring the cost down sometimes costs which are loaded with taxes, etc., do affect overall cost impact. Is there any room for reducing such costs in some ways like this?
So I think Ashish very clearly explained that there is a cost reduction if you follow some protocols, which is green. So having said so, I think cost reduction is one angle which one has to look at. On the commercial part, residential part also, hardly, I would say very few, probably 5-6% of people would be using air conditioning for residential application, and most 90-95% will be without air conditioner. And today we are talking of comfort with air conditioners. So the cost, as of now, what we recommend is that whenever the cost analysis is done, it has to be done on a life cycle cost analysis, not rather initial cost or the running cost. So if you do a life cycle cost analysis, you will have a better understanding of how much saving and other inputs you are getting in. So as a ASHRAE, we have a lot of documents on this, which we are circulating out and circulating amongst the members. So that is what I would say, Pratap.
All right. Before we go to the next question, I want to get again to an audience poll on adoption of technology. So audience, please look at your panel again, and we have the screen for you. Why has the construction industry been slow in adopting technology? Options are: manual labor is cheaper than using technology, lack of enforceability, users not aware of benefits of technology, lack of education, lack of on-the-job training. Choose one option. Because my next question is pertaining to technology. All right, I think in another 5-7 seconds, we'll get the answers. Okay. So users not aware of benefits of technology, 37%, hands down. And let me, without saying which is the other next best, manual labor is cheaper, is 22%, so far behind. And let me also say that the same results we found in another webinar, which was to do with construction technologies specifically. So I think users not becoming aware of benefits of technology seems to be an overriding issue. And that brings me to the next question. Yeah. And I would like this question to Ashish. Can you take this question? IoT-based integrated security and building management solution platforms all help in terms of risk as well as cost. But the high costs, again, associated with the technology are obstructing. So, with this cost kind of a fever that we are going to get now, is it going to send us back 20 years back, where people will say, no, let's get down to the lowest cost? As it is, there was a, in everything there was lowest cost was the first option. But now with cost becoming a concern, with the economy taking a hit, are we going to go back into doing this, or are there going to be low cost cloud-based solutions which can possibly help in times of crisis like this?
Pratap, I would get into a little controversial side now. We've been having two easier conversations so far, so let's make it a little more spicier. And I'll put my views in a very different direction. First of all, on the survey that you did, one of the things that again I find missing, what my own assessment, I've spoken about it at the other panel discussions also, one of my assessment why the construction technology adoption has been poor has been the lack of viability of the business environment in the country. There is a contractor sitting there on the panel, there is a consultant sitting there on the panel. Ask them if they are happy with their business viability, and that goes down all the way up to the developer, all the way. So one of the reasons why I find that technology adoption, whether it is at a consultant level or a contractor level and a developer level, is the same story, doesn't happen because the profit margins that they're all working on has been very, very low, and some of it is completely unviable industry where we stand today. That's one part of it. Now, second, coming on to the part where you spoke about the IoT-based solutions and all also. The IoT-based solutions have been around, whether we start with the simple building automation systems to what they've evolved to today become an IoT-based solutions. They don't cost much. In fact, if you ask me, in a large buildings that we do, anything between 25 rupees a square foot to 35, 40 rupees a square foot, I can get a very decent automation system installed in a building which costs you 2,500 rupees to 3,000 rupees a square foot, 35, 40 rupees a square foot for automating it, for taking out the labor dependencies on it is not a big cost to play. There are enough companies around and doing that. I think where I find the challenge has been, number one, there has been lack of trust on these technologies. There has been such a negative experience of their execution in past. At one point, even few years back, I made a very remark on the panel. I said, automation doesn't work. Show me one building where the automation works today. Every time things are going bad because of the poor labor that we deploy and the poor training that we have in our industry. There's been a challenge there. So that is one of the causes that I saw. Second, of course, the technology has been so fast changing as today the IoT platforms and all have come. Their penetration and understanding at a designer level and at a user level is still not complete. In fact, I see a lot of gap in their understanding of what we are hearing there. So I think it's both. First is has been a lack of trust, and second is a lack of penetration of the knowledge there. And I don't think budget is the issue, because budget doesn't cost much. I think it's that reinforcement where it needs to be done. And if the first system was to work right, get the desired result to the owner, there is no way that owner will not take the second and the third and the fourth, because we all know the advantages of the system. That's my take of it for that.
Right. You mentioned that the business model itself has an element of deficit in it, which I would partly agree there, because, I think it's about the scale of the project. Whether it is a road project, whether it's a port project, I think we have defined scale of projects at such small levels that the profit margins are, they don't get to scale up. So there were certain earlier road projects which were coming up, which were for much smaller, shorter stretches. That didn't allow contractors to really get as much of a margin as they could when there would be a longer stretch, because then they could deploy the machines all across the longer length of that road. Similarly, maybe a single building versus a whole group of buildings in a particular community offer different kind of advantages. And I think that needs to probably be taken up at the tender levels and probably the scale of operations that our developers, etc. do. Mr. Kapoor, I'd like your views on this. I think you saw the poll, and but are we really clear? Do we really communicate the benefits of technology, and do you think the users are completely familiar with them when they actually adopt it? I mean, if there is like a life cycle costing kind of a situation done, so many systems which appear costly at the time you buy them, over a period of 3 years to 5 years give you far better returns than the cheapest system that generally people go to buy.
So Pratap, is very clear that an automation system on whichever platform, whether we're talking about the erstwhile systems or the future IoT that's coming in, on a payback, everybody will buy it. On a life cycle cost, there's nobody who would say no to it. Like Ashish also talked about the costing. On that perspective, nobody can say no to it because it makes pure financial sense from a saving, energy saving, monitoring point of view. One big gap that we see ahead, as I'm a service provider, I'm from a contracting, I'm from an implementation background. The biggest gap that we see is that people who understand the technology do not understand the applications, and people who understand the applications do not have knowledge of the technology. And therein lies a very big gap. And then the client starts thinking, listen, what am I doing? He takes in, we know a lot of clients who, for their first large installation, will go in for a full-fledged automation system or whatever type. They'll go in for everything. And a year later, 2 years later, he's building his next building. He'll call up his facility manager. Listen, how is my BMS working? And that guy will say, "Haan sir, on off acha karta hai." That's it. the whole situation, which was actually put in together over there to monitor, review, energy saving, etc., has basically gone down to just replacing an operator or switch on off, and that's it. That is where the biggest problem lies in, that you do not have the right people operating the systems. You do not have the same person understanding the technology and the application. So there is a big gap over there. Until that gap gets narrowed down or these two marry each other, that is the only way when clients will actually get the benefit of it. The biggest reason clients are not going into it is not cost. It's because they are not getting the full benefit of an automation system or of any intelligence system of any technology as what they thought they would be getting out. Then they say, might as well knock it off, yeah, just do it for some common area, just do it as less as possible. Let's not go the whole hog because anyway it's not going to be working out. So that education of the entire system, the entire spectrum, right down from the operator to the designer to the implementer to the person who's conceiving it, the whole system has to be totally thorough. Till that such time, I do not see technology really improving much in India.
So, I'd like to bring in two elements here at this time, and I'm inspired by some of the questions which have come from the audience. That on one hand, we have the unorganized sector, which is using the benefit of the education that you provide to the entire audience, that this is the benefit of technology, but they probably duck certain parameters, certain metrics, and develop products which are probably cheaper, but do not let the buyers get the same value and returns as you had originally indicated when you informed them about the technology. So that there is some sort of a that distrust which you say is actually emanating sometimes from the kind of brand that you associate with, sometimes from the overall offering that they have received from their own local vendor, etc. So one is the unorganized sector. How are we distinguishing our sector, which actually meets with all the needs of the guidelines which are served by various codes that are there, National Building Code, etc. And the other part is that we have existing legacy buildings, we have existing legacy systems where even insulation is a big issue. So the buildings are hardly insulated, and I think Energy Efficiency Services Limited has come out with some project which they're doing for Maharashtra government to insulate the buildings and show them that they can do some saving of costs. On this, I'd like so Mr. Sanjay said, what do you have to say on this part? That is there an element that we need to distinguish the organized sector from the unorganized, or some sort of the Bureau of Indian Standards, somewhere we can distinguish the areas and therefore give proper returns to the people who are paying for them?
I think Mr. Seth is not there. His network is having issues.
Okay, Mr. Mittal, would you like to take that?
I think I rather this question should be taken by Ashish on this aspect. I would rather say that. Ashish, can you take on this question? Because
sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So Pratap, there is each and every sector has been taking up this area. ESL is one of the implementers on behalf of government for the larger projects. But if you look at it, even ISHRE for that matter, if I give a chance to Vishal, he'll speak about that. But I can tell you about it. ISHRE has just got into what we call a India Building Energy Performance Standard, ISHRE Building Energy Performance Standard. Now there the concentration is, or the focus is, to come out with a standard which talks about the building energy performance, make the people aware, give them a benchmark to compare their building. So ISHRE at its own end is doing it. There is a society called ASHRE which has got a large code on building energy efficiency. Our government level, we have a ECBC which has been around, which has now been made mandatory, has been implemented. Today, it is mandatory to submit an ECBC compliance certificate before you even start construction. So at the time of MOEF and all, that's been done. So all of that is coming in, and everywhere in each of these areas, each of these focus on that what is being recommended is sustainable. It has a life cycle cost which is available to it, and it makes sense. The very fact that India sits on a second largest green footprint in the world, it talks about the fact that people have understood that by going for energy efficiency measures, they are the ones who are getting benefit. In fact, a lot of discussions I used to have earlier where they used to talk about why doesn't government give us incentive for making our building efficient, help us to implement. So on the other hand, I used to ask that who's going to get benefited by it ultimately? You are the one who's getting a capital cost reduction. You are the one who's getting an operating cost reduction. Why should government be investing in you? And then government give the idea of the FSI. So the awareness from an ISHRE front is being done. If I look at a Fire and Security Association, we have also been talking about a safe, efficient buildings. We've been participating with the like-minded societies. Government has been talking about it. So there has been a significant shift which has taken now in this arena already. ESL example that you gave, they are always ahead in terms of coming out with the newer things. Like ESL is currently looking at district cooling aspect. District cooling is something which has missed India altogether. In a larger installations in Dubai, Middle East, in Europe, in Americas, you find district cooling or district heating as a way to go for larger development. But in India, we gave it a miss completely. There's practically no examples of it today at this point of time. So that's where the ESL has taken lead, and they are doing notably good work there. Even the UN bodies are helping them there. And hopefully, these are the kind of things where the ESL can play a role in steering the ship of India Energy Efficiency brand as such. So that's how I see it, Pratap.
Right. Mr. Kapoor, would you like to add anything here?
I think Pratap, one thing that you also talked about is the organized and the unorganized sector.
Yeah.
And I would not know the numbers. You might know them better in construction industry specifically. What is that number of organized versus unorganized sector? Now, we might talk of bringing in more incentives to the organized sector in various ways, but we need to understand that in a country like India, if you do not recognize the unorganized sector, if you do not ensure the unorganized today becomes the organized tomorrow, we will not grow as an economy. Now, whether that covers the air conditioning contracting community or air conditioning service providers or fire and security people across the whole country, if we do not get those people up the ladder, I'm not talking about their revenues, I'm talking about in their technology, in their skills, in the way they handle work, your country will not change. Because finally, you have a country which is spread across a spectrum of towns and cities where everyone cannot reach. As Ashish said, green buildings are talked about at a spectrum of construction, right? To take it deeper down, you will have to get into unorganized sector. You will have to get into smaller players. How do you get into smaller players? You will need to get into training them, into educating them, into explaining to them that this is what you gain if you start improving your skills. And till that time, if you do not do that, I do not see the country changing much. You look at the ESI numbers, you look at how many organized labor is there in the country as a percentage of the total unorganized sector. It's one small percentage. I will not comment on the numbers right now, but it's a very, very small percentage. Why is that? Why are we not even able to recognize the unorganized labor in the country? Numbers of immigrants we're talking about, I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit. Huge number of these immigrants are actually in the construction industry. Why were they called immigrants till date? A lot of the immigrants are actually more or less settled in those cities. They do not travel for 1 month to 2 months. They're there for years altogether. Why are we not recognizing those people? Why that till that time we don't do it, the construction industry will largely remain unorganized and technology, skill upliftment will not be able to come in.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I think the migrant labor issue is one of the biggest concerns. In fact, we did a webinar where we put a poll question where we said that because of this economic package being offered by the finance minister, if you were given a loan with collateral, without collateral, loan with low rate of interest, or a payment for 3 to 6 months for your employees under 20,000 rupees, or return of your refunds and taxes, or availability of labor. These were the various options. Which one would you choose as the most critical need? The most critical need was availability of labor, and second was return of refunds of taxes, etc. That means the people are saying, give me my labor back, give me my taxes and my refunds which are due to me back, and I'm good. You know, you don't need to give me these loans and collaterals, etc. So the package completely missed the need of today's businessmen when they're trying to restart their businesses, restart their factories. And that is why I think what you mentioned, we need to be able to empower the smaller units with the knowledge that what are the standards which they need to adhere to in order to qualify, and maybe they can do very innovatively with Jugaad, etc., in a much better economical fashion and deliver the goods. As long as the outcome is good, I think we are good. Mr. Seth, we were missing you. We just concluding remarks on what do you think the government ought to do in order to boost the sector. We are seeing that the real estate sector is going to go through a big deficit in terms of all its projections. We were already in a slow cycle before this COVID crisis has hit us. What is that the government can do to help this?
Yeah, so I mean, sorry, there was a power failure, so I had to kind of. Anyway, I think what we've seen in this pandemic is that the informal sector, which forms the backbone of the construction manpower, is very, very vulnerable and to impacts such as the COVID-19 and other hazards. So the government's prime focus should be how do you really provide safety and security to the health of these workers. How do we create a conducive environment for them to be kind of supporting this huge infrastructure sector, which is one of the biggest drivers of the economy, if you really look at. And I think the government none of us can actually ignore this any longer, because we have taken them too lightly. It's, for example, in the GRIA Council, one of the mandatory requirements that we evaluate is safety, hygiene, and sanitation of the people who are at the construction sites. And if we find that this is compromised, we don't give them any marks as far as this is concerned. And many of the people who work with us closely, they know this for a fact, that this is a complete no-no, and it's a mandatory requirement, and it cannot be ignored. So that is one. And then also we need to, as I said, that sustainability, resource efficiency, we cannot ignore it any further. I mean, it's going to be very, very critical if we really want to make the right kind of, the impacts that we are looking at.
Mr. Mittal, any last wish for this industry from your end?
My wish is that I think I would say that there are a lot of myths about whether or not to use air conditioners or ventilation or air cooling. I think that is a way forward, because health is very important, and we have a ISHRAE guidebook which has been compiled after making a lot of research on the papers, and I would request everybody to use it, and we are there to guide you all the time. Thank you.
Ashish, your last wish from your end?
My wish is that at this point of time, we are now done our lockdown bit, and we have done an awareness bit also at this point of time. And it's time that we are allowed to rebuild the businesses, because otherwise there's a much bigger pandemic out there which is coming in terms of economic. What's going to happen? I've got friends all around who are talking about the businesses. Some of them don't even know what to do. In fact, one of them said, I wanted to dissolve my company. I can't even do that now. So there are much bigger challenges out there. So yes, on one side, what has been done is right. But I think on the other side, now it's time for this to prevent the second pandemic from happening. So I think it's time that the businesses should be allowed to rebuild with the proper guidelines. And I think the implementation is something we should all focus on, and rather than obstructing the business environment at this point. So that's my wish list.
Mr. Kapoor?
Where I started from, let's not forget what we're going through. Let's not forget next year what we are supposed to do today. Let's ensure that what all we have learned or learning today across board, whether it's in air conditioning or fire security or building construction, etc., remains with us for the rest of our lives. And secondly, finally, not concerned exactly over here, but as business owners, as business heads, finally, we have to take care of our team members. And we need to be awake and alive to that cause and ensure that we are with them at all times, especially during these days. And also my heart and my prayers reach out to people in Bengal because of the cyclone that came in yesterday. It's actually devastating. I do not think the media is covering it enough as what it has happened. And from a construction industry point of view, there are huge damages every half an hour. I'm on this call today, but I had committed. Otherwise, it's impossible to not look at a phone right now, because the amount of destruction that has been caused in this city and state is unbelievable. So
Thank you.
heart and prayers reach out to all of them.
Yeah, I think at Construction World we also wish everybody much care and relief for during these times. But I think it's time to get back to work. While the debate goes on between the lockdown and unlockdown between states, I think, like you rightly said, each one of us needs to know that what is best for us, and the best for us is to get back to work. As we can all put our shoulders to the wheel, we will see some semblance of normalcy return, because this virus is here to stay for some time. And here's wishing all of you safety and health. Thank you very much for being part of this webinar. We will try and share the links to these guidelines which these esteemed council members have talked about. So please be on the lookout for the mails which come from our end about the webinar recordings, etc. for all of you. Thank you very much for participating, panelists. Thank you, Mr. Rishi Mittal. Thank you, Mr. Ashish Rakeja. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Seth. Thank you, Mr. Vishal Kapoor. And thank you, audience. We've had a wonderful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pratap. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.